First take on a Thursday. Clearly, I am riding solo, holding things down here in Bristol, CT, while Max and Stephen A, they're in their hometown in New York City. Gentlemen, hello, good morning. How are we?
What's up? What's up? How y'all doing? What's going on, Max?
How you doing, Stephen A? Ready to go?
I'm always ready. You should know that by now. What's up?
Of course.
Here we go. Already with a little New York attitude because he's there. Let's get into it, gentlemen. I miss you, but it's okay. We'll see you again shortly.
I think you survive.
Oh, please. Ryan Fitzpatrick set a Jets season record for TD passes in 2015, but the knock this offseason as he lobbied for a new deal was that the Jets couldn't get it done when it counted. The Bills crushed the Jets, crushed their playoff hopes, handing them a loss in the final game of the season at Buffalo. So that was just the latest in a series of poor performances for Fitz. Against Rex Ryan teams, he's now only 1-8 in his career against Rex, including 0-2 last season. Stephen A, I want to start with you here. Who needs tonight's win more, the Jets or the Bills?
Well, I would tell you that it would be the Jets simply because of their schedule. I look at the Jets right now and I say to myself, excuse me, who do you have? You had Cincinnati in game one. You've got Buffalo tonight. Then after that, you got Kansas City, Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. I mean, my Lord, if you can't beat the Bills tonight, you might start off this season 0-6. So I look at it that simply. That's what it comes down to. If I'm thinking about the career of Rex Ryan, obviously you would say him. But I'm not thinking about that right now. I'm thinking about what the Jets need, and I think that the Jets desperately need this game, Max.
I think the Bills are the team in a must-win situation here, Stephen. I hear what you're saying about the Jets' schedule, but the Jets are a good team. You're going to win some games. You're favored. You're supposed to lose. You're going to lose some games. You're supposed to win. That's the NFL. I don't think you can look at the schedule and just pencil in losses on all those games. The Bills, meantime, look, the Jets lost a close game at home to an excellent team. But they just gave their quarterback a short deal, and he was looking for Fitzpatrick a long deal, and the Jets looked at him and said, no, we're not giving you a long deal, given your age and, frankly, the quality of quarterback he is. Tyrod Taylor, on the other hand, from the Bills, got a $92 million contract. And when you looked at Tyrod Taylor last year, you said, that guy is the goods. But can you actually say that he's solidified his position among the top half of the quarterbacks in the NFL? No, not really. Short track record so far. The jury's still out on him. And against Baltimore, albeit on the road, he couldn't get anything done. The offense couldn't get anything done. I mean, they really had, forget about missing a field goal, okay, that they didn't lose by 3, they lost by 6. But they couldn't get anything done against Baltimore. Now they have a home game. It's a divisional game. You got to win this game. You can't go 0-2 in the season and lose to a divisional rival at home when Rex has already turned up the volume on how desperate the situation is, Stephen. The Bills must win this game. And by the way, look who's probably playing tonight, Sammy Watkins. You think they would risk Watkins on a short week, on a Thursday game, if they didn't view this game as must win? I think that's an indication the Bills know they got to have this game.
Well, I mean, they both have to have this game because now they could go 0-2. Watching Adam Schefter this morning, he reminded me that only 12% of the teams in NFL history started off 0-2, ultimately made the playoffs. So we understand that it's a level of urgency that gets attached to both squads, Max. But here's the deal. Here's my argument against the Bills. You got the Bills. They've got the Jets at home tonight, okay? They've got Arizona and New England on their schedule the next 2 weeks after this game. One is at home against Arizona. The other one is at New England. But then they close out that first stretch of the 6 games, the first 6 games of the season against the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. So conceivably, there are 2 wins, potentially 3 on the schedule for the Bills, and it's not beyond the realm of comprehension that they could end up 3-3 after 6 games, regardless of what transpires tonight. But when you look at the Jets, Seattle and Pittsburgh, I mean, I'm just looking at some of these guys on the Jets schedule right here, and I'm saying to myself, how are you going to pull this off? I don't know how they're going to pull this off. You've got Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's your starting quarterback. You acquired Matt Forte in the offseason. You're getting Sheldon Richardson back tonight after his 1-game suspension. That certainly helps you, considering the fact that the Jets' defense was already stout in terms of getting at the quarterback. At least that's what Week 1 indicated. Brandon Marshall can't drop a key pivotal pass for a first down that could have put them in field goal position. He's got to make amends for that because he simply has to catch those passes. But ultimately, I'm going to go back to their schedule here. After tonight, the Jets have Kansas City on the road, Seattle at home, then road games against Pittsburgh and Arizona. And I'm saying, look, that is no joke. You're talking here about 3 road games over your next 4 games after tonight's game on the road against Buffalo. If that ain't urgency for the New York Jets, I don't know what is. They've got to win tonight's game. They just have to do it.
You're absolutely right about the schedule. The Jets have a brutal schedule, and not that I thought they were going to make the playoffs this year anyway, but that is really a deciding factor. I don't think either the Bills or the Jets, neither of those teams, are playoff teams this year. And the schedule for the Jets certainly has a part of that. But when you look at the Jets as a team, every team you just mentioned, even with the home games, when they look at their schedules, even if they're favored, when they're determining, is this a tough schedule or an easy schedule, they see the Jets on there, that's a tough game. Jets are a good team. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. On top of everything else, who do you think is better, the Jets or the Bills? I think the Jets are better than the Bills. I think they're a better team than the Bills.
But schedule matters more. But schedule matters. I understand what you're saying, but schedule matters just as much as talent. Yes, you could have a good team, but if you're playing monsters, as opposed to playing pigeons, that's a difference. If you're the Bills, you appear to, at least over the first 6 weeks, you have a considerably easier schedule than the New York Jets do. And I'm not selling out on the Jets at all. I think there's a level of urgency that's attached to this game. I think that's why they're going to show up in Buffalo tonight, which is why we're about to talk about the outcome.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor to me is the key for Buffalo. Really not a good performance week 1. He seemed hesitant to run, which is, once upon a time, quarterbacks were duped into not running even if they could. But obviously now, at least most people are enlightened. Hey, by the way, if you can do it, do it. And he seemed hesitant to do it, and they didn't get anything going in the passing game either. The Ravens have a good defense, and now they're at home. But the Jets can pass the ball, too. They have an attack with real receivers and a quarterback who's not a great quarterback, Fitzpatrick, after all. I mean, but he's a competent NFL quarterback who's comfortable with his receivers. I like the Jets tonight on the road, and I think it's bad news for Buffalo.
Well, we definitely agree there. I definitely think the Jets are going to win tonight because they have to. Both teams have to. And to be quite honest with you, I'm sick and tired of Rex Ryan's mouth for crying out loud, dropping F-bombs all over the place, trying to inspire his team, doing all of this other stuff. He's great at making headlines. He's not necessarily great at winning football games. Rex Ryan has proven himself to be exactly like his father, God rest his soul, the great Buddy Ryan. He was a phenomenal defensive coordinator, but the word phenomenal doesn't get attached to his resume when it comes to that of being the head coach. And that is the issue with Rex Ryan right now. Rex Ryan has proven that he knows what he's doing defensively, although there was a drop-off for Buffalo from 54 sacks to just 21 last year, and it seemed to be a bit discombobulated with Mario Williams not even wanting to be there, with him throwing a hybrid 3-4 out there and guys having to adjust, and guys that are prone to rushing the passer, and they had a history of that, forced to drop back in coverage because this is what Rex Ryan had them doing. Instead of adapting to his talent, he was trying to get talent to adapt to his system, and that didn't bode well for them last year. They got to make amends for that. We understand that. Rex Ryan is great at making headlines, but ultimately that's what it comes down to. He's great at making headlines. When he wins football games, it appears to be against the Jets, and that's why Todd Bowles and the crew have to step up tonight, answer the bell, understand the level of urgency, stop getting beat down by Rex Ryan coach teams, handle your business, do what you have to do if you're Ryan Fitzpatrick. Don't be 1-5 against them or 1-8 or whatever the hell the record is. Ryan Fitzpatrick's got to step up. Matt Forte has to step up. Brandon Marshall has to step up.
Stephen A., I want to interrupt you for 1 second because I want to get to that Rex Ryan sound so we can dive deeper into this conversation. So he spoke in a documentary titled Rex and Rob Reunited on the subject of coaching and how he potentially lost his swagger there. Take a listen.
All right, guys, let's get going. First things first, everything's questioned. I forgot how to coach. Oh, hell, the players don't respond to Rex. He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. So that puts a massive chip on my shoulder. Every one of us in here has something to prove. Nepotism. Rob, the only reason Rob's here because of nepotism. Really? Okay. We all know how good a coach he is, but maybe the rest of these people don't. But they're going to find out, aren't they? People are going to see. They're going to see who the hell the Buffalo Bills are. The best revenge is massive success. Don't be afraid of it. I don't give a shit. Who knows it? Here we are. Here the we are. Do we have work to do? You're damn right. We got a shitload of work to do to get there. But aren't we the guys for the job?
Well, there's that. He forgot how to coach, and the man who was once praised as the players' coach is no longer getting a response from his team. That is scary. Powerful words by Rex. Stephen A., explain to me, what is he trying to accomplish?
Well, he's motivating his players, and he prides himself on being a player's coach, somebody that is skilled at ingratiating himself with personnel to the point where they will go out there and perform at a max level for him. There was a time where it worked. There was a time when I believed in Rex Ryan. There was a time when I looked at Rex Ryan and thought that, you know what, he was the right man because he came to New York City, bloviating and blustering and what have you, and he took them to back-to-back AFC championship games, which was an incredible and phenomenal accomplishment considering the Jets' history. But from that moment forward, Rex Ryan has been home in the postseason watching games just like the rest of us. Rex Ryan coaches during the regular season. During the postseason, he is nowhere to be found. Maybe in the Bahamas, maybe in Hawaii, but it damn sure ain't on an NFL field during playoff time over the last 5+ years. That's the reality of the situation. Rex Ryan is not getting it done. And so when he sits up there and he talks about people doubting him, he's absolutely right. He's not wrong. But he's incomplete in what he's conveying to the players as to why those doubts have come forward. The doubts have come forward because they've justifiably been there. The numbers prove it. His record proves it. And when you have bravado and it's matched with no results, full of bluster and all of that stuff signifying absolutely nothing. That's what Rex Ryan's resume has been. I root for the man. I don't want him to lose. I mean, I want him to lose now because he's in Buffalo, and I'm not a Buffalo Bills fan. I'm more of the New York City fans, and, of course, I'm a diehard Steeler lover. But when I look at Rex Ryan, you don't want to root against him. You don't want him to lose, but you do find yourself consistently looking at him and saying, quote, he's really a defensive coordinator, just like when his dad coached the Chicago Bears as the defensive coordinator. Mike Ditka was the head coach. But Buddy Ryan was so phenomenal that the players carried him off the field, too, because that defense was what it was all about. I think Rex Ryan has much more of a chance of a lengthy NFL career being that guy than being a head coach. Because as a head coach, at least one side of the ball doesn't work for him. For years, it was the Jets' defense. He goes to Buffalo, and suddenly it's their offense is good, and their defense wasn't yet last year. He can't seem to get the whole package together. That's Rex Ryan's problem.
Well, the problem with Rex Ryan is that, to be a loud coach in the AFC East, can you imagine? You're in the same division with the greatest coach who ever lived. You're never going to win. In the long run, you're always going to be at best second best. And Gase just got to Miami, so after Buffalo, I don't know that there's a job open in Miami, especially the way the defense looked week 1 at Seattle. In a way, I feel sorry for the guy. You're a loud, boisterous guy who talks a game, and Bill Belichick's in your division. Case closed. It's over. It's over for you. The reason Rex Ryan is turning up the volume now, it's Spinal Tap. This one goes to 11. He's at 10 all the time. So where does he go from here? His X's and O's and his execution and his game planning has not, I'm just stating fact, has not been good enough in recent years. Hasn't been good enough. So what I'm hearing from him basically is do the same thing you're doing, only harder. And the thing about football is at times that can actually work. It's an adrenaline sport. It's a full contact sport. If you win at the point of contact on the line of scrimmage, things like that, the team is a little extra motivated. But he's been, that could have an effect. And maybe it did once upon a time. But if you're always doing that, if that's constantly the message, eventually, of course, the players have to tune that out. If not tune it out, they're already operating on a certain level. You can't push them any farther because they hear it from you all the time. It's not like a coach who's not not prone to do that, suddenly giving you a kick in the pants and, oh my God, this guy never. No, that's always Rex. So just keep what you're doing only harder. The problem now is also, he had 2 defensive players tweet, I think it was, about how they'd taken Uber because they missed the team bus. That's, his brother's working with the defense. That looks bad. That you're going to hear nepotism. You're going to hear too much of a player's coach. You're going to hear discipline issues. Of course, if they're winning, you don't hear any of that stuff. But if you're losing and that stuff comes out, of course you're going to hear that. Now, I'm glad you brought up Buddy Ryan, Stephen A., because imagine you're a kid and you see your father, who's not the head coach, carried off the field by his players. That must leave an indelible impression upon you. You have to be thinking that you want to be that you want to be loved, because that's love from players. You want to be loved like that. And maybe it's not saying a head coach can't be loved like that, but maybe that's not always the best thing for a head coach, or the path. It's the easiest path, or the straightest path that's most conducive to success. But clearly, he wants that. He wants to win and have his players love him like that.
Everybody wants to be loved, but that don't mean you have to care about it if you don't get it. I mean, hey, news flash. Yes, Stephen A. Smith himself, I would love to be loved. I just don't give a damn if I'm not outside of the people in my inner circle, because it really does not matter. Because what matters to me are results. It does not matter to me how affectionate people are towards me.
I love you, Stephen A. If it makes any difference, I love you. If it makes you feel better.
I appreciate it. I thank you for it. But I wouldn't care if you did it. It just doesn't matter to me, okay? At the end of the day, what this comes down to, if you're Rex Ryan, I know you'd like to believe that, but it's not true. Here's the deal. The bottom line is this. When you look at Rex Ryan, you've got an offense. Now, mind you, for years in the Jets, you had Mark Sanchez. Don't get me started with Mr. Butt Fumble himself, okay? You had a running attack, and you had a stout defense, and that's what you lived off of. Now you're in Buffalo. What happens here? You've got, for the first time, you had a quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. You got LaShawn McCoy, who's an absolute stud. In the offseason, you secured the left side of your offensive line with Cordy Glenn and Richie Incognito. Haven't heard that name in a while, but evidently he's doing a damn good job, and they're happy to have him in Buffalo. Good for him. The point that I'm trying to make is you buffered your line of scrimmage. You protected the blind side of Tyrod Taylor. You know that because you're the stout, brilliant defensive mind, that the defense for the Buffalo Bills is expected to be better this year, and yet you walk into the season opener, albeit against John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens. You walk into the season opener, and you've got Tyrod Taylor, and you've got LaShawn McCoy, and you score 7 points, and obviously Tyrod only passes for 111 yards. Sammy Watkins wasn't 100% healthy. Had that foot injury, is expected to play tonight. We understand they're listing him as probable. But in the end, what it comes down to is that there always seems to be a problem in one area or the other with Rex Ryan's team. He never seems to have it all.
You brought it up, Stephen A. You brought it up. What quarterbacks has he had to work with? We'd like Tyrod Taylor to be the real deal. He seemed at times last year to be the real deal, but we don't know yet if he's going to stick consistently as an excellent NFL quarterback. If I had to bet money, I would bet on Tyrod Taylor. But the track record isn't totally there. And other than that, who has he had? He really hasn't had a stud quarterback. So that can go a ways towards stunting your defense. Your offense.
Yeah,
you don't have a guy.
But that's not the point.
You don't really have a guy to pass the ball.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is Rex Ryan seems to have messed up in a myriad of ways over the last 5 years. Offense one day, defense another, quarterback 1 year, defensive line another. There always seems to be something with this guy as the head coach. But the only thing he's consistent about is winning headlines. That's the bottom line.
That's true. By the way, Revis and Watkins matchup. Where's Revis Island? Is Watkins going to be 100%? Will he, in fact, play? If he does, how successfully? What will it mean if Revis is on? It's interesting.
Matchup within the matchup. For the record, Jets are favored by 1. And Stephen A., you're starting to grow on me a little bit. We want you, just kidding. You saw the interview I did. It was all love. We want you guys to weigh in at home on who you got tonight, Jets or Bills. Go on to the First Take Twitter page and vote. We'll have those results at the end of the show. Meanwhile, the G-Men, they got jokes. Victor Cruz and cornerback Janoris Jenkins clowning Redskins cornerback Josh Norman's lack of coverage of Antonio Brown. Cruz essentially saying he calls himself the best corner in the league, so you have to cover the best receiver. I thought he was going to follow AB. He made his choice. So putting it on Norman there. In week 1, Brown had 8 receptions for 126 yards and 2 TDs in a 38-16 win over the Redskins. Here's Norman on SportsCenter.
I'm just doing what I'm asked to do. Doing the job and doing the best of my abilities. Like I said, trying to be a cerebral assassin of details and assignments which my coaches asked me to do. Trying to be a technician of the game. And I think anything that I can do and willing to, I'm all for it. I think whether I'm traveling or not traveling, one side, left side, who really cares, man? Just get the job done. Whoever gets the job done, so be it, man. All this talk about this guy match up with that guy, who really freaking cares? I mean, you come out with a W, you win the game.
With games this Sunday at home against the Cowboys and the following Sunday at the Giants, Max, does Norman need to respond on the field?
He needs to do exactly what he's doing. He can't try to please anybody except his coaches, his teammates, and himself. They have to try to win games. Josh Norman played a certain way in a certain system that got him a $75 million contract. He needs to stay disciplined and continue to play the way that he was playing that got him the money in the first place. Not now change because he has the money and Stephen A. Smith and others, or Victor Cruz, want to see him call people out and go to the coaches and say, you know, hey, coach, put me on so-and-so because he's the best receiver. As I said, and Mike Greenberg referenced it earlier, imagine if after week 1, he's in there with the coaches making a ruckus about how he wants to be used differently. To hell with your game plan, coach. I need to do. No, that's not. First of all, it's not how he got his money. It's not how he became the player he is. And it's not conducive to success. And by the way, we've been saying it all along. Stephen A., everyone who's come on this show has said the same thing, except for Tim Hasselbeck. He said he considers him a cover corner, but everybody else said he's not really a classic cover corner. That's not his game. He has to be used in certain ways, not exactly like that. And so if everyone's on the same page, if that's who he really is, and clearly it also seems that Washington feels he has value not strictly as a cover corner, then no matter what Josh Norman says to the public, no matter what other people say on other teams or in the media, he has to continue doing what's made him successful. Why would he change?
Well, first of all, that sounds sensible. But what I find absolutely hysterical about your position, shared by Mike Greenberg and Mike Golick, by the way, because I'm laughing at them just the same way I'm laughing at you. Nothing but respect and love for y'all, by the way.
That's nice. I mean, good company.
I'm laughing at it because I recall several times last year where Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg were talking about Josh Norman and Odell Beckham Jr. I remember everybody gravitating to that story. I remember ultimately people gravitating to Josh Norman because he was recognized as one of the elite corners in the game, who was brash, had bravado, would stick out his chest and let you know, here I come. Obviously, he had a plan. And the plan worked to perfection, because what would happen is people would draw attention, aim their attention in his direction. As a result, they would challenge him. When he showed and proved that he was up to the challenge, it obviously assisted in him getting a $75 million deal, $50 million guaranteed. All I'm saying is to live up to the hype that you yourself has created. I never said that Josh Norman did anything wrong. I don't blame him for anything that happened Monday night. What I did say, however, is that I got text messages from Hall of Famers. I got text messages from dudes who actually play in this game right now that sat up there and said, quote, when you are elite and you've got a guy like Antonio Brown on the other side of the field, that's not an assignment you leave to somebody else. You usually ask for it. I've never played NFL football, never played football on any level other than playing in the streets with my boys growing up, and never had any damn desire to play any football. So in my elocution, in my willingness to articulate my position so brilliantly, I might add, it is simply because I am being educated by those who know. I'm not pretending to know. I'm saying to you, no, it damn sure ain't you. I'm talking about people that have played in this game, that have played in this game, who educate me about what the position requires and what it comes with. And I'm not saying, and Mike Golick and Mike Greenberg know good and damn well, nobody's asking for Josh Norman in the middle of his first game to start screaming about guarding Antonio Brown. What we're saying is, you signed for $75 million, $50 million guaranteed. You are clearly the man, even though Breland is pretty damn good. You walk into this situation, you've got months to prepare for game 1 of the NFL season. You know you are going up against Antonio Brown. How do you just sit there for months and it's totally okay with you if you never see this man? That I don't understand.
So you want him to coach,
and I don't
too.
think.
So part of the $75 million is to play and to coach too. He should draw up game plans. He should be in the coach's room, and he's the defensive coordinator.
Well, Max,
is that what it is? I mean, what do you want him to do? And how does everyone know he didn't mention something to a coach?
Let me ask the question. I'm asking you. Are you telling me that in all your years of discussing sports, you've never encountered players, all those times, all of those shows you did on Sports Nation, you never encountered players that were elite, that would tell you what they've told the coach? No matter what sport it is, you're trying to tell me that stars don't go up to coaches and say, this is what we should do, this is what I want to do.
Sometimes
in basketball,
they do.
give me the damn ball.
Sometimes
I'm saying
it
happens. I'm saying it happens. Right?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're criticized for doing it, and it's considered, especially if they just joined the team, it's considered something that's not desirable because they're imposing on the coach. Sometimes it's considered that's a real thoroughbred guy who's champing at the bit, and he wants it, and we like that competitive drive. It depends on the context. We don't know if Josh Norman mentioned something to someone at some point, and furthermore, we talked baseball yesterday. Here's another baseball analogy. Sometimes you have a guy, and we talked about it in the context of Josh Norman. Sometimes you have a guy who's signed to a big contract. Take a Carlos Beltran, signed a huge deal with the Mets once upon a time. Now, Carlos Beltran was never a guy who was going to hit 50 home runs and hit 330 and hit third or fourth. He hit third or fourth in a lineup, but wasn't going to be the best number 3 or 4 hitter in the league. That wasn't him. Carlos Beltran was extremely well-rounded. He hit well. He hit for good power. He ran the bases really well. He played defense excellently. He was just an overall player, and that's why he got his deal. When he showed up on the Mets, it would have been a mistake for him to think, now I have to hit 50 home runs, because that's not what he did. That's not how he got paid in the first place. What we're asking Josh Norman to do, who might be a 40 home run hitter, he can do some things, he can cover guys, but what we're asking him to do is suddenly stop being a well-rounded defensive player that excels in certain schemes and now be a 50 home run hitter. It's not what he is, Stephen A. It's not going to work.
What makes me laugh is that you go on for 3 minutes, but you agreed with my answer. I said to you, is it not true that stars usually ask for the ball or ask for the assignment? You said sometimes, which means it happens. So the point is, if that it happens, it's not beyond the pale for Josh Norman to go to the Redskins long before Monday night ever took place. And this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, and this is why I signed here. This is why you told me you wanted me to sign here. The Redskins, as an organization, we're talking about Daniel Snyder here. Daniel Snyder, who wants the headlines, who wants the bravados, who wants to be in the news clips, who wants attention gravitated towards his franchise. He got one of the loudest mouths in the South, if not the entire NFL, who has game to back it up. And on Monday Night Football, in front of 80,000 people, the #1 receiver rolls into your house and whips y'all and Josh Norman is nowhere in the vicinity through no fault of his own. But nobody has a problem with that? I don't understand y'all. I really don't.
I mean, the team looks at him and goes, you're not exactly a guy who's going to blanket a guy. You have ball skills. We can use you in different ways. That's how we intend to use you. And Josh Norman may have said, hey, I'd really like AB, or maybe he didn't. But we don't know that certainly one way or another. He hasn't denied saying that he asked for anything. But had he done it, that could have been perceived in a number of ways, including in a very negative light. Dude, you just got here. We have Breland. We think he's good. We want to use your skills differently. Calm down. Like, that could have been taken a whole bunch of different ways.
Listen,
and Norman didn't play poorly.
All I know is after Pittsburgh dropped 38, I hope when it's Dez and it's Odell Beckham that he goes to the Redskins and asks to cover both of them, just as a football fan. You don't want to miss.
That's all.
Yes.
That's what you want to see. But Max doesn't care about theater, Molly. Did you know that?
Fan, sure.
Max got court ringside seats at fights and don't give a damn about the theater of sports. No, Max don't want that. He doesn't mind sitting at home being bored, watching Josh Norman covering no names.
Oh,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to Max. It doesn't matter, Max. It doesn't matter to Max.
As a
no big
fan?
deal. It doesn't mean
You're
anything.
asking me as a fan or if you're Josh Norman?
Both.
As a fan, of course you want to see it. But if you're Josh Norman, it might not be wise.
To beat a man, you've got to beat the man.
Amen. All right, let's leave it there. One of the latest voices to weigh in on the Colin Kaepernick protest is Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney. He did not hold back in his disdain for the recent protests.
I think everybody has a right to express themselves, you know, in that regard. But I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team. I don't think it's good to use the team as the platform. I totally disagree with that. You know, nobody's really asked me about Kaepernick or whatever, but you know, I totally disagree with that. You know, not his protest, but I just think there's a right way to do things, and I don't think two wrongs make a right. Never have, never will. And I think that it just creates more divisiveness, more division.
Booger McFarland, kind enough to join us. Thank you so much. I know you're being pulled in a lot of different directions here today. You had really strong comments on Dabo Swinney on your Booger and Burns podcast. Can you please share those with the audience, your reaction when you heard Swinney?
Well, you know, when I heard him talk and I heard him continue to, you know, elaborate more on what you just heard, he talked about not only about the divisiveness, but he also talked about some of the accomplishments and some of the accolades that the African-American male has accomplished. In the same breath, he talked about people who don't like this country can leave this country. And the only thing that came to my mind was the translation. Hold up, wait a minute. So you're telling me that the people who are complaining about injustice, which are the African-American males, that's what Colin Kaepernick is protesting about, justice for people of color, justice for the African-American male. We don't think this country is perfect, and we need a change. So the people that are complaining about change, the black people, we can leave. And then you list the accolades as if just because we've had a two-term president, just because we have a owner in the NBA who's black, just because we've been allowed to quarterback at Alabama and Georgia, everything is okay. That the black man has now arrived in America, everything is okay. That's the way I interpret it, and it really kind of set me back because my mother was born in 1955. She shared with me some of the experiences when she grew up, how she was treated. The black man hasn't always been treated right in this country. I think we all agree. Now, are things that way today? Things are so much better today. But to say we've arrived, and just because we can quarterback at Alabama, just because an NBA owner such as Michael Jordan owns a team, just because we've been allowed to do more things in this country, doesn't make the equal rights that we've been striving for there. And I just I was just taken back by his comments, and it really bothered me. So people want to talk around the subject. They don't want to talk about the subject. And the subject is, when are we going to do something about the inequality? When are we going to do something about the justice? And that's what Colin Kaepernick is striving for. Do something. Let's not just keep talking. Let's do something about it.
And the scary part, according to some people, don't think there is any inequality at this point.
Correct.
Stephen A., let's get your thoughts here.
Well, I'm a fan of Dabo Swinney, and I like him a great, great deal. And that made me very, very disappointed in what he had to say, because I thought that it reeked of insensitivity. He basically said that we should be grateful for what we have, as opposed to acknowledging that as a nation of people, as an African-American community, we've been treated as second-class citizens for a vast majority of American history. And even though we're on a come-up compared to what things were like pre-civil rights movement, of course, the bottom line is that there are still challenges that we have to deal with every single day, and it's consistently an uphill climb. And for somebody in his position, coaching a slew of African-American players, to not be sensitive to that plight, particularly when he's in South Carolina. You're down south, so you're fully aware of what life is like and has been like throughout history down there. For those words to come out of his mouth, I would really love to have a conversation with Dabo Swinney about that, because, again, I genuinely like the man, and I've got a lot of respect for him, and I just felt that it was highly insensitive, ill-informed, and just dismissive, if I could use a stronger word. The other thing that resonated with me was when he basically talked about, leave this country. Again, I took it as him saying, this is the greatest country in the world. You want to find out how bad it can be, go someplace else and see what it's like compared to what it is here. So I'm trying to give him a pass there. But the flip side to it is that he has to understand that that's arguably the most dismissive thing that he said, and it was highly offensive to anybody black to hear those words coming out of his mouth. But I want to emphasize that whether it's him or a Trent Dilfer, both positions I disagreed with. There were some points that they made that I could respect and attach validity to, and even though I may disagree with it, it's no reason to excoriate and character assassinate them. You should just correct them and say, look, this is how it affected us. Trent Dilfer and Dabo Swinney are in an entirely different category, just in terms of their words on this subject, than is the case with Boomer Esiason, John Tortorella, the Team USA hockey coach, and, of course, Mr. Tony La Russa, the former manager with the Oakland A's, St. Louis Cardinals, and now an executive with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Molly, can y'all do me a favor, please? Play for our audience what Tony La Russa had to say so I can highlight the difference between him and Dabo Swinney. Play that for me, please.
I would not allow it on my team because I think respect for this country, the flag, I know what the Constitution says, but I also know you have some rights as an organization, and I really distrust Kaepernick's sincerity. I was there in the Bay Area when he first was a real star. I never once saw him do anything but promote himself, and all of a sudden now he's a second stringer, and he's got this mission and I just don't trust his sincerity. And even if he was sincere, there's ways to express your belief in some of the issues that face blacks around this country without disrespecting the country you live in or the flag that it represents. Absolutely would not allow it.
What everybody needs to understand is that Tony La Russa, John Tortorella said they wouldn't allow it, and Boomer Esiason said he would have cut him. They're saying that despite the fact that you are breaking no laws, whether it's federal laws that govern our society, or even the laws of the league that you play in, since the NFL may encourage you to stand up, but it doesn't mandate that you do so. What they are saying is, despite the fact that you are breaking no laws, despite the fact that you are simply doing a quiet, peaceful protest, they are appalled because they disagree with you, and as a result, they would exact ramifications against you. That's entirely different than Dabo Swinney and Trent Dilfer. They just disagree. In the case of La Russa, Tortorella, and Esiason, they are saying they would exact consequences against you for exercising your rights as an American citizen, your rights as a human being, particularly when you are attached to a community that has clearly been disenfranchised. I think that's the most egregious part of all of this. I think it's insane that they've gotten away with saying it, and somebody needs to call them on the carpet, especially in the case of Tony La Russa and John Tortorella. I don't think John Tortorella should even be allowed to coach Team USA until he retracts those damn statements. I think it's that much of a travesty that he's gotten away with it. Go ahead, Max.
A lot to get into here. Let me try to get to it quickly. First, Tony La Russa. I'll call him on the carpet right now, Stephen A. Tony La Russa is very patriotic unless the President of the United States extends an invitation to the White House because his team won the World Series. He did not show up when President Obama invited him to the White House. Then I guess he wasn't as patriotic as he is some other times. It's his interpretation of how you show patriotism that's important, I suppose. It's an outrageous comment Tony La Russa made, who's had a lot of success as a major league manager. I mean, in Oakland, where everyone swelled up twice their normal size and started hitting home runs, and then in St. Louis, where the exact same thing happened. He had a lot of success as a manager. You can't take that away from him. But these kind of comments are outrageous from Tony La Russa, particularly based on his past behavior. I want to get into Dabo Swinney because he and La Russa totally missed the point about Kaepernick. Kaepernick is being asked to actively participate in something. He's not protesting by forming a picket line around something. He's being asked to participate in something that his conscience will not allow him to participate in. That's completely different. You're the one imposing something on him, not the other way around. So this idea that he's choosing the wrong forum, or now's not the time or the place, or there's a right way or a wrong way, doesn't hold water. Dabo Swinney. I was not as offended as many about what he had to say. Now, listen, he's not the smartest guy in the room. He's not the dumbest either. He was basically trying to make a Martin Luther King point where he says there are some who, this is what I took, focus on the good stuff. Let's focus on all the progress we made. Okay, Dabo, but there are those who say, well, no, let's focus on how far there still is to go. And he doesn't seem to want to focus as much on that. He wants to focus on how great we are because of how much progress we made. I like to focus on that too. But you can also acknowledge that people have a legitimate point where they say we're not there yet, as I bring up all the time. Differences in per capita education and income, and unless you're of a school of thought that somehow some people are intrinsically inferior to others, then there are reasons for those differences. And of course, we know what this country's original sin is. We know how it's been over the last several hundred years in terms of the oppression of people of color, specifically African Americans in this country, and clearly that has not been redressed. And finally, I like what Dabo Swinney said about when he talked Jesus. And he said, love thy neighbor. And if everyone would just pay attention to that, everything would be okay. And it reminded me of something Chris Rock said, who I love to quote because he has a quote for everything, really, that's right on the money. Chris Rock said, you know, people talking about how much progress black people have made, how much progress. Black people haven't made progress. White people have made the progress because they started acting right, or at least more of them started acting right than they used to. Love thy neighbor. Yes, Dabo, that's what these protests are about, Coach. These protests are about, for way too long, white people didn't follow that rule, and that's why we find ourselves in the predicament we're in. This stuff ain't rocket science, folks.
It's not, and you're absolutely right, Max. And Booger, I'll close by saying this. Dabo coaches in a sport that epitomizes the problem that exists in the United States of America. How many Division I-A programs are there? How many black coaches are there? The paucity of African Americans heading football programs, the paucity of African Americans in athletic director positions, the paucity of African Americans in positions to be presidents and chancellors, etc. We're talking about more than 100. I mean, just as recently as a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, Booker, correct me if I'm wrong, there were less than 10 black folks made up less than like 8% of the population in terms of head coaches in Division I-A football. Matter of fact, I think if I don't have the numbers in front of me, I forgot it. I had them last year, but I think the number was around 3% for crying out loud. It was an absolute travesty. So the things that Dabo Swinney are alluding to, this progress that he's talking about, well, where is it in the very profession that he's in? I don't see it.
Well,
do you?
No, Stephen, to your point, I think the biggest thing that we learn from this situation is to make sure that we talk about what we're an expert on. Dabo is talking around a subject, and he, like most people, are trying to straddle the fence. They're trying to be politically correct. They're trying to make sure both sides are happy. Just be an expert on who you are, Dabo. You're never going to be a guy who, like me, grew up in the South, or someone like my mother who was raised and born in 1955, who grew up in the South and had to deal with some of the things that black people had to deal with. Be an expert on yourself. And if you really want to find out the progress that black people have made, or the perceived progress, then just ask one of us. Ask someone and take a look, because I think the problem is, even though we've come so far and everyone wants to relate and say, man, things are so much different, I think when you really drill down underneath the surface, a lot of black people think things are still the same. They're just hidden.
And clearly still a very long way to go.
Yes.
There's 13 black head coaches in Division 1A, so clearly a small minority.
Out of 120, 28 schools, I think.
Yeah, and the one owner that he referred to in the comments, one NBA owner, no black NFL owners. Booger, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, your take, and your honesty. So come join us again soon.
Cam Newton being rushed, being pressured. Newton reverses his field. Got to get rid of the ball. Throws it and gets hammered. And a flag down.
Wow, he got hammered, dude.
That was a big hit.
Public for going for the head. He's hurt. There was no place to go.
And Cam Newton rolling around.
Yep, here it comes.
My job is to win football games. My job is not to, to lobby for, my health. I feel as if, it's been times that I've been taking hits, they haven't been called, but that's understandable. And sometimes I've been hit and they have been called. So I just can't point the finger and say I haven't got no calls, because I have.
Cam not placing any blame, taking the high road. He's not worried about his health. He's worried about winning. Max, I don't know about you, but that's how I would want my quarterback to respond. Do you like the way Cam handled this?
I do. Whether or not he means it, I like it. He's matured from experience. That's what experience does, especially if you're smart enough to learn from it. And last season, after a very disappointing Super Bowl loss, he didn't face the media as many would like. And listen, was that a good thing or a bad thing? A bad thing, not a huge bad thing. I don't care as much about that stuff as I do about the on-the-field stuff. But he could have handled it better. He could have tried to get his emotions in check a little more and answered the questions more professionally and stayed a little longer. But, okay, it's an emotional moment. And what's much more important is your work on the field, not off the field. But as the face of the league, because make no mistake, Cam Newton's the face of the league. Last season, at the end of last season, ESPN did a poll, 100 most famous athletes worldwide. Now, because the NFL is not as global a sport as soccer or as basketball, there were a lot of soccer and basketball players before you got to the first NFL player. The second most famous NFL player at the time was Peyton Manning. The third was Odell Beckham. The first was Cam Newton, before Peyton Manning, the first. And since then, I think there's been a recognition that the Panthers will continue to be excellent, that Cam is in his prime, that you can expect more of the same, whether it's not its 45 overall touchdowns and a Super Bowl appearance. Cam is in his glory right now, in his prime. He's going to do big things. And what we're seeing here is, in addition to the on-field stuff, he is learning how to deal with the media off the field. We know at ESPN that when the media is talking to a player or a coach, it's an adversarial relationship in many ways. Our job is to make them feel like, the interview subject feel like, we're not adversaries, we're not out to get them. But the fact is, we're trying to make news, we're trying to extract from them something that we can feed on. And here Cam is doing his best not to give it to us, which is his job. Taking responsibility, not coming off like he's complaining. Whether or not, Stephen A., he truly means it, the important thing is he's giving you what you're supposed to get from a man in his position.
I disagree. And first of all, let me piggyback off your last point about the media's job to extract information and, somewhat be adversarial or whatever. That's not necessarily true. Our job is to try and decipher what the truth is, to get as close to the truth as possible. It's not to be adversarial. It's not to be loving. It's to be about the business of trying to gather as much truthful information as you could possibly pull off to give and disseminate to the masses, you know, to make sure that you avoid as much spin as possible. As far as I'm concerned, I've always been of the mindset, Max, that the media, by and large, is not the one that makes things hostile. It's the subjects we're interviewing because they want to give their own spin. And what we're supposed to be doing, anyways, most of us are striving to do, is get as close to the truth as possible, because that's what creates real dialogue.
There is truth in what you're saying. There is truth in what you're saying, but these guys have been burnt by less honest people in the media, and even sometimes when they have good intentions, have been burnt by the media time and again, whether or not they're hiding or spinning. But I'm sorry.
Well, let's be clear about something here. They've also burned the media because they've lied to our face on many times, which has created and elevated the level of cynicism that exists within the media. How many times have we turned around and had to revisit stories we found out somebody lied through their teeth? And they do have publicists and all of these people. Well, what the hell are these people employed for? To give you spin, so you don't give the media the truth. You give the media the version of the truth that you want disseminated. So by mere virtue of their job description, we know that they lied a hell of a lot more than we do. Now let me get back to Cam Newton. Cam Newton, I can respect where he's coming from. I like him, genuinely like him. Had to get on him a few weeks ago. We rapped about it. Everything's cool. Here's the point. Cam Newton is the star, is one of the preeminent stars in the NFL. Roger Goodell has been preaching about safety, okay? A lot of money has come out of a lot of people's pockets. I just had the pleasure, and believe me, it was my pleasure to talk to James Harrison after Monday night's football game at FedEx Field, who has been fined in excess of over $150,000 by Roger Goodell and I. We had a great conversation. Got nothing but respect for the brother. My point to you, Max, is there are so many people who have suffered at the hands of this league because of what Roger Goodell has implemented in terms of safety. And the number one priority is undeniable, is protecting the quarterback. And yet the star of this league, and I don't know if there's a bigger star in this league at the quarterback position other than Brady or Aaron Rodgers, and even that is debatable after the year that Cam Newton had. If you get knocked upside your head, I don't have a problem with Cam Newton speaking up in his own defense about that, because that's not supposed to happen. It's not like you're in a boxing ring and you got an opportunity. You manning up, they manning up, and let's go. He's running, scrambling for his life, trying to throw a football, and you have the freedom literally to assault him, but it's not supposed to be in the head. He is 6'5", 250 pounds at least. He's got a whole lot of body to hit, and you have to slap him upside his head? There's a problem with that. And I think that what's happening is this. Yes, Cam Newton did the wrong thing by getting up because he was so frustrated after the Super Bowl loss and cutting short the interview. He did the wrong thing there, especially after all that dabbing he did last year. But by and large, Cam Newton is a role model. He's a good man. He conducts himself professionally. He handles his business. He wins. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Cam Newton speaking out and speaking up for himself. And I think his hesitancy in doing so is indicative, yet again, of a guy who appears to be a bit overly concerned in this day and age by how things are going to be viewed as opposed to how they are. I don't blame him for it. I understand
let me get this straight.
It.
When it comes to Josh Norman and the way they play that actually affects the on-field stuff, then appearances are important. But when it comes to the face of the league, who doesn't want to be perceived as whining when enough other people are correctly pointing out the injustice of the hits that he's taking to the head and the fact that it's not being called, when he does it, then perception is or isn't an issue. What exactly is? I didn't know it meant so much to you that a Tier 2 quarterback got hit. Apparently, it's a big deal when a Tier 2 quarterback gets hit. I'm glad to see that for you.
If you would zip it for a second, you'll let me answer your question. I was going to say to you, I honestly don't understand what the hell you just asked me. I don't comprehend the question. I really, really am lost. I don't understand the comparisons that you're trying to draw. You keep going on.
You're saying Cam Newton,
I'm telling you, you have lost to me. I don't understand.
Okay, well, let me try and find you.
Please.
So you're saying Cam Newton shouldn't be worried about perception here. So he should say something. Josh Norman should be worried about perception, right? Or shouldn't he be worried about perception?
Yes, yes. Here's why.
Why is perception?
Okay. I'm getting ready to tell you. Josh Norman signed for $75 million, $50 million guaranteed to play a position and to be recognized and validated as one of the elite corners in this game. But somehow the best wide receiver in the game comes into his house and he is not on him. That is not something that can continue. Whereas in the case of Cam Newton,
because he's not the coach.
Hold on, I'm answering it. Literally, in the case of Cam Newton, he is getting knocked upside his head. That is a danger to his health. I would think that would be motivation to speak up for yourself in your own defense, to protect yourself from future harm. You don't understand that?
In Josh Norman's case, that's the coach's decision, but you want him to say something so the perception is he's a gamer. In Cam Newton's case, as the quarterback of the team who will be roundly criticized by many for whining if he says something about it, other people are already talking about it. It's already a point of attention. He does not need to add to that. So the proper thing in Cam Newton's case to do is simply say, hey, I get some calls, I don't get some calls, I'm worried about the play on the field, that's all I can control. That seems to be not only the responsible thing to do in his position, but the smart thing to do. No?
So it's smart not to come to your own defense so you could somehow avoid getting knocked upside your head. And you're comparing that to Josh Norman playing his position against an elite receiver. You're comparing the two. Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Gentlemen,
we disagree.
Yes, you do. Yes, let's agree to disagree and leave that one there. We know that all eyes will be on those refs as the Niners travel to Bank of America Stadium to face Cam. They'll be on Colin Kaepernick as well.
Fitz looks left, steps up, fires into the end zone, and is intercepted in the end zone. Huge third down for the Jets. Fitz fires a floater downfield. Intercepted by Manny Lawson. Fitzpatrick back to throw. Fires down the middle. Intercepted. It is picked off at the 40-yard line by Tarpley. And that will put a cap in it. And the Bills are going to knock the Jets right out of the postseason.
The Bills continued their recent dominance over Gang Green by eliminating the Jets from the playoffs in the final week of last season. The Jets have lost 5 straight to Buffalo, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, he struggled considerably against Rex Ryan teams throughout his career. The loser of tonight's matchup will drop to 0-2. No bueno. Marky Mark in the house, the Super Bowl champ Mark Schlereth here with me. So good to have you.
Always good to be with you guys.
When I'm,
you're here alone. I've never got to sit on this part of the table. I'm always over there at the Thanksgiving table.
Do you feel like a made man?
I feel good about this.
Good.
I feel like I've moved up. I've elevated myself.
If you like it, I love it.
All right.
Let's get into it. So who needs tonight's game more, the Jets or the Bills?
I'm going to say the Jets. And you know what? Let's face it. This is what I love about the National Football League. It's always white knuckle mash on the panic button, right? You go 0-2, and what's the percentage of you getting to the playoffs? Like 12%, 6%, something crazy like that if you go 0-2. But here's why I think the Jets need this more. I think it's psychological. Look at what happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick. They were 10-4 in games against the rest of the National Football League that weren't named the Bills. 0-2 against the Bills. He had an 18 QBR against the Bills, a 70-point-something or other QBR against the rest of the league. Psychologically speaking, you have to get over this hump if you are the New York Jets. What happened to you last week? To go ahead and watch that game against Cincinnati, to get 7 sacks and absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage and find a way to lose that game? I mean, you're a good football team. Mentally, you have to get over the hump. That's why I think this is more important for the Jets than it is for the Bills, because they've got to clear that mental hurdle that is the Bills.
Get that monkey off their back. Guys.
I disagree with you, Mark. I disagree with you there, but I love your point about the 0-2, because really the NFL is a situation where half the league, week 2, has a must-win game. And in this case, it seems like it's the same for both teams. But Buffalo's a team playing at home, can ill afford a divisional loss at home. And I look at something like Sammy Watkins playing, Mark, and that tells me a lot. On a short week with a bad foot, they want to make sure he's on the field. Doesn't that indicate that Buffalo's in dire straits, that they're desperate?
Yeah, well, of course they're desperate, because you go 0-2, and I mean, week 2, 11, 12 days into the season, week 2, you go 0-2, and pretty much you're going to be written off. And obviously, you can still battle back. The Seahawks started 0-2 last year. They battled back, but they're a better football team. They've got some clout. They've got some juice. They've got a track record that the Bills don't have, and frankly, the Jets don't have. So that's exactly what makes this game great, why we tune in, week out, why we'll be watching Thursday Night Football tonight, Jets-Bills, because it does matter.
Stephen A.
Well, it definitely matters. I just think that it's and I believe the Jets are going to win this game. I think there's an elevated level of urgency because of what their schedule is over the first 6 games. But what I'd also like to add is that, you know, the clock's ticking on Rex Ryan. We have to point that out. Enough's enough. I mean, he bloviates a lot, talks with a lot of bluster, and it signifies nothing because he's been 5 consecutive years he has not been in the playoffs. As a head coach, you tell me, Schlereth, I mean, how does that look? 5 straight years? You're out of the playoff picture? That's bad, man. That's very, very bad, especially for somebody who talks as much as he talks, brings as much attention to himself that he brings to himself, gets as many headlines as he does for his team, and then hires his brother, who, by the way, stunk up the joint as a defensive coordinator in New Orleans. Now, I don't want to sit up there and act like Rob Ryan can't coach, because once upon a time, I thought when he first arrived in New Orleans, both of you can attest to this, I thought he did a damn good job. But then somehow the wheels came off the cart, and over the last couple of years or so, the New Orleans Saints, they have had one of the most horrific defenses we've seen in quite some time. He ultimately ends up getting booted out of there by Sean Payton. And you land with your brother? I mean, come on now. So if you're Rex Ryan, you're sitting up there, you're ingratiating yourself with players. You got nepotism going on because you got your brother in the house. All right? You're making headlines every week, but you don't win. And, oh, this time, when you're not winning, you have a quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. And Max is right when he says the jury is still out on how good Tyrod Taylor can be. I just think Max left out the key pivotal point here. He's certainly better than Mark Sanchez. I think we can all assume that. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you've got a Tyrod Taylor. You had a Sammy Watkins. You got a LaShawn McCoy. You had an offensive line. You had a relatively decent offense, and it was your defense, which is your signature, what got you to be a head coach in this league, that wet the bed for the Buffalo Bills last season. The year before, when Doug Marrone was coaching them, they had 54 sacks. Last year, they had 21. Mario Williams is a former #1 overall pick. This dude couldn't get out of town fast enough. Why? Because he's an edge rusher, even though he takes time off from plays at time to time, which you can speak to, Schlereth. But this dude has skills, has talent, and ultimately, in terms of getting to the quarterback that is, and ultimately you got Rex Ryan asking him to drop back in coverage because you're playing some hybrid defense. There's a whole bunch of questions. So, yeah, we look at the Jets, and we know it's a must-win, and we know they got to step up and get it done, particularly with their schedule. But even though more pressure's on them because of their schedule, and this is a must-win for both, I think we need to recognize the clock is ticking on Rex Ryan. Enough's enough. He's got to show up, and it's got to be against somebody other than the Jets.
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, if he does not show up and they do not put a run together and they aren't a playoff team, especially, and you look at this division right now, you know, you looked at it like the first 4 games, Jimmy Garoppolo, the New England Patriots have to go on the road and play Arizona. This is the time that somebody else steps up and actually grabs on to the lead in the AFC East. This is the time that somebody usurps the New England Patriots and the dominance they've had in that AFC East forever. And here we are, week 2, Patriots 1-0, everybody else 0-1 within the division. Rex is certainly on the hot seat.
Yeah, we thought that door was opening. They shut that real quick.
1-0 on the road. Yeah.
Right? But to your point earlier, only 12% of teams, like you said, made the playoffs after going 0-2. So it's a must-win for more reasons than one. We want you guys to get involved in the conversation at home. Who you got tonight, Jets or Bills? Hit us up on Twitter. We'll share those results a little later in the show. Stephen A. loves when Big D's in the headlines, and Terrence Williams has been the story this week, but for all the wrong reasons. The Cowboys receiver has been getting slammed by Dallas fans all week after he failed to get out of bounds in the closing seconds of Sunday's loss to the Saints. Williams responding to the criticism yesterday to the Dallas Morning News. Quote, Well, since I've been here, the fans have been doing this. So if you drop a pass, they say you can't catch. If you do something wrong, they'll blame you. It just comes with the job. I just learned to block people out. Their opinions don't matter to me. At the end of the day, I'm still here. I'm still doing my job. And if you feel like you can come take it, come take it. Mark Schler is still here with us, but I want to start with Stephen A. because you can relate to Terrence here because you often get annoyed at Cowboys fans as well. But Stephen A., are you with him here? Do you think it was smart for Williams to say this?
No, I don't, because he's not an elite producer. His best season, receptions-wise, was 52, which was last season. His best, as well as yardage, because he had 52 receptions for 840 yards. This is not an elite receiver in this game. I think his skill set is above average, but I think that he showed his annoyance, and I'm not sure how wise it was because he's not a high-end producer, and the Dallas Cowboys are not winners. This is a team that's a moribund franchise. We all know the story. 20-plus years without a Super Bowl, only 2 playoff victories in that span over the last 20 years. They have the worst fan base in American history. They are more delusional than any fan base I've ever seen in my life, Schlereth. They will go 1-15 and wake up the next morning and talk about how they're going to win a Super Bowl. It could be Case Keenum or Max Kellerman throwing footballs to them right now, and they'll still say they're going to the Super Bowl. They do not live in reality. They are all caught up in their imagery, the star, now the billion-dollar playpen. They got the owner that takes the helicopter to practice, and as if that's going to do some good. They are all floss, and they are devoid of substance. And now you have a receiver who messed up because he had a brain freeze, forgetting to get out of bounds, and he's got an attitude because a fan base, as delusional as they are, you must give them credit for their loyalty and their belief in you, and you reward them by literally going off on them because they're disgusted at you because, once again, you were devoid of production, failing to get out of bounds so you could get the ball to a kicker that had kicked 4 previous field goals for you, including one for 56 yards, when this field goal, had you gotten out of bounds, would have been for a mere 6 more yards at 62 yards. But that's the Dallas Cowboys fan base problem. Not yours. They got problems all over the place, but I'm not surprised. It's the Cowboys. What else is new? Something to complain about, to steal headlines before they go and stink up another joint on a Sunday afternoon. I'm so surprised.
Well, I will say this.
Let's look at the quote.
Oh, go ahead. You go, Max.
I just want to look at this quote for a second, Mark. So if you drop a pass, they say you can't catch. Well, they're not going to say you can. Mm-hmm. If you do something wrong, they'll blame you. Yeah. And if you do something well, they'll cheer. I mean, this is the way it works, although I do think that at a certain point, if you're a fan, it becomes counterproductive. You want that built-in punishment to be there for the player who doesn't perform. You want them to avoid that and be cheered. But at a certain point, it's counterproductive if it's not helping your team, if it's just to vent if you're the fans. And I got to say something. I love the way Terrence Williams has owned this. Right afterwards, he didn't make any BS excuses. He just said he did a stupid thing, basically. He's like, look, I thought this. I was wrong. This is why I wasn't supposed to do it. Stood by his locker, answered every question, was totally honest about it. What more can he do? Hopefully he learns from his mistake. That's it.
Here's what I would say. I always love it when a guy talks about the fact that he doesn't listen to the noise. He doesn't listen to the fan base. And then he comes out and basically says verbatim what the fan base is talking about. Meaning, yeah, you do listen to the fan base. You know what I'd like to see? Listen, they're entitled to their opinion. They pay for those tickets. They support us, and I screwed up. Bottom line, like you said, Max, we move on. I think deeper, though, going to Stephen A's point about the organization, I wasn't in that huddle. I don't know what went down in that huddle. I don't know what they were talking about as an organization on that sideline. I do know this. Being in those situations and having played in those situations, those are things that are said in the huddle before you break the huddle. Guys, you catch this. You have got to get out of bounds. You cannot turn this thing up on every play. It didn't happen once in that drive, guys. It happened twice. It happened twice in that drive. It cost them the first time. They dump it to the running back, who makes a great move, turns up in the middle of the field, has an opportunity probably to run to get out of bounds and save 12 seconds, turns up in the middle of that field, and essentially costs them time there as well. Now, after that happens in that drive, the first thing you would do as an organization in that huddle is say, guys, we can't afford not to get out of bounds. Make sure if you're on the sideline, don't fight for that extra yard and a half. Get your butt out of bounds. And yet it happened again later on in that drive.
Laughing?
That's an organizational issue.
You know what has me laughing about
Sounds
what
like
you're
a
saying?
coaching issue.
Yes.
The more I think about it, I'm imagining Jason Garrett, on the sidelines, the ultimate cheerleader himself. I mean, his microphone and it should be pom-poms. I mean, that's what he does. He cheers and pats everybody on the back. Even he did it with Des Bryant, even when he caught the touchdown that was overturned because he bobbled it, didn't have control. But you're patting him on the back and shaking him with affection because, you know what, you're not paying attention to what's going on. It's not beyond the realm of comprehension, Mark Schlereth, Max Kellerman, that indeed, maybe Terrence Williams didn't hear that. I mean, it's the Cowboys that we're talking about here.
You know what?
Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Right. I do know
Molly,
this.
I want to say
Go ahead.
One more thing about Terrence Williams. It is a little tone deaf for him. Like, it would have been better. I don't have a major problem with what he said, but it would have been better if he said, look, of course they're booing me. I messed up. I mean, like, there should have been some kind of acknowledgement, even though he's already owned it, that this is what happens when you mess up. Otherwise, I don't have a beef with him.
Yeah, I know this. 62-yard field goals are hard to make. Okay, they're hard to make. But I know this. 62-yarders with no time on the clock where you don't get a kick it, there's a 0% chance of making those field goals. And that's exactly what they left them. They left themselves zero opportunity to win that game at the end of the game because of the mistakes they made during the course of that drive.
I think they rectify it moving forward. I'm gonna hope on that, right?
That
they're going to run out of bounds. Terrence Williams will run out of bounds moving forward.
Okay, let's hope.
Well, let's
Hopefully not.
Yeah, against the Giants. 16 career TDs in 3 years. When we come back, Max's NFL MVP looked the part in Week 1. Will he look the part against the Broncos this weekend? Mark Schlereth, staying put. Meanwhile, Colts quarterback Andrew Luck isn't buying the notion that the Denver Broncos are a dirty team on defense after a number of questionable hits on Panthers quarterback Cam Newton in Week 1.
I wouldn't use that word. I'd say they play hard. And like any good defense, any good offense, really any good football team, you want to toe that line of aggression. And they certainly are tough, physical, good defense. Sometimes you get hit in the head and a flag comes out or it doesn't come out. I don't worry too much about it. It's a ref's job in a sense, and by and large, I think they do a great job of that. But I can't worry about that. I go out and try to figure out, all right, how can we get first downs? How can we get touchdowns against, what was one of the premier defenses in the league last year, and starting off on that foot.
Luck's 2015 season ended with a lacerated kidney on a clean hit against the Broncos Week 9 last season. Luck and the Colts facing the Broncos in Denver this Sunday. Mark, you know a little something about this team.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for Luck against this Broncos defense?
Listen, the Indianapolis Colts have always played the Broncos well. For whatever reason, they match up well. Luck has had some success. Now, Luck is one of those guys that will hold the ball sometimes, holds it too long sometimes, takes, the lion's share of the punishment in the pocket at times. But he has got this matchup situation in Denver where he's matched up well. And I think it really has to do with their smaller, kind of elite quickness type of wide receivers across the board. Does a great job of spreading the ball, does a great job of getting to those guys with opportunities for run after the catch. But they have played their best football against the Denver Broncos. Now, I look at the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm kidding you not, man. I think they're, talent-wise, a 4-12 team that wins 11 games every year because Andrew Luck is that good. And Max said he's the MVP, or Max is MVP. I'm 100%. I mean, that guy can flat out play. He is great. And they have matched up well with the Denver Broncos. You would look at this on paper based on Week 1, how bad Indianapolis was, especially on the defensive side, and you'd have to give the nod to the Denver Broncos. But still, there's something about that matchup that just bodes well for Indianapolis. They just seem to play their best football against this Broncos team, and that's been consistent since Andrew Luck has come into the league and faced the Broncos on almost a yearly basis.
So Luck's the real deal, the team not, and obviously that division getting better. Max?
I agree with Mark exactly there, but playing Denver, you know, you can win the game, but it's almost like fighting Joe Frazier. You might win the fight if you're Muhammad Ali, you know, if you're great. You might win the fight, but what price do you pay afterwards? Because last year, the price Andrew Luck paid was essentially the rest of his season. Those body shots he took ruined his season. So it's not, and even he's saying, you know, they're not dirty. Of course, when Cam Newton says almost the same thing Andrew Luck says, somehow he's criticized, and Andrew Luck isn't. I do suppose Cam Newton was taking shots in the head, and Luck not as much. Illegal shots, Luck not as much. But like Cam Newton, Luck is a big, strong guy who represents most of his team's offense and has probably got too much heart for his own good, or at least his own health. But because of all that, just in terms of this game, even without an offensive line, even with taking a while to get rid of the ball, even with that absurd Denver defense that can get after the passer and can cover the receivers, they have a chance to win. I do believe, I said it before, I do believe Andrew Luck will be the MVP this season. As Mark pointed out, I think they have a chance to win double digits. And when you look at this team, Luck represents a bigger proportion of his team's offense than anyone, maybe including Cam Newton this year. They have a chance to win. Luck will win the MVP, but he will pay a price to beat the Denver Broncos because that line cannot block for him.
That's why Luck is not going to be the MVP. You got problems on your offensive line. You've got problems all over your defense, particularly with your secondary. Now you've got injuries. Darius Butler is out. Vontae Davis is out. Clayton Gaithers is out. You know, all of these guys, when you look at their secondary and the injuries that they incurred just last game, you know, they lost to the Detroit Lions. Jury's still out on how good the Detroit Lions are going to be. But I look at the Indianapolis Colts, and, you know, that Grigson Pagano situation that ultimately Irsay elected to keep in play, it just says to me, you know, that something was wrong. It's just that Irsay didn't want a change in personnel. He didn't want to have wholesale changes, so he's making them work together. But I got to tell you something. I'm not enamored with what I'm seeing around Andrew Luck in terms of the team collectively. I know he's got receivers. Frank Gore is steady, solid, but he's older now. And I don't know how much you can expect from him. I don't know how much you can expect from that offensive line. I don't know how much you can expect from that defense. So to me, Schlereth, Max, even though Andrew Luck has MVP caliber talent and he has the potential to put up huge results, meaning offensively, I don't think the team itself will end up being good enough for him to garner MVP honors, because at the end of the day, other guys are going to do well, but their teams are going to do better as well, whereas Andrew Luck, in my opinion, is going to suffer because of the personnel around him.
I would totally agree with that.
They're a 4-12
Go ahead.
You mentioned they're a 4-12 team that because of Andrew Luck makes the playoffs, and that was true then. It's probably true now. I think that argues for his MVP candidacy. I want to mention, first time that Andrew Luck goes to Denver and plays, and there's no specter of Peyton Manning there. You know, like that story is now off the table. As recently as last year, it wasn't. And even him playing in Indianapolis, so long as Peyton is in the league, that kind of the shadow of Peyton Manning is there. It's gone, Mark. Does that mean anything for Andrew Luck, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, Andrew Luck he's a consummate professional. He's going to go out there and he's going to play. And I love the fact that he downplays the dirty defense thing, because ultimately it's about focusing on your job. And I always loved it as a player. And I played for the Denver Broncos, as you guys know, and we were cut blocking machines. And I loved it when teams would complain about how dirty we were and how many cuts we would throw and how many, low blocks we would throw during the course of a game, because you're not focused on defending. You're focused on how we go about doing our business. And so as soon as I'd break the huddle, the very first play of the game, I'd walk up the line of scrimmage and go, hey, man, watch your legs. Watch your legs. And the next thing you know, guys are hitting me in the back of the helmet. I'm cutting a guy down. He's hitting me in the back of the helmet. And Terrell Davis is running for 48 yards, because you're not worried about making a tackle. You're worried about punching me in the back of the helmet. First, I got a helmet on. Second, I got nothing but rocks in my head. You're not going to hurt me doing that. So I love it when people talk about the Denver Broncos being a dirty defense. Do they play over the line? Absolutely, man. Are they super aggressive? Absolutely. But that comes down to officiating. If you're not going to call it, like if you're not going to call helmet-to-helmet hits, man, I'm going to keep throwing. I'm going to keep going out there and playing because that's the mentality of a player. I don't think they're dirty. I think they're super aggressive. And I think it was great that Andrew Luck said, no, they're not dirty. They're aggressive. And that's what great football teams do.
The Broncos are favored by 6. Oh,
Andrew.
Go ahead, Max.
No, I was saying Andrew Luck's also a big, strong guy like Cam Newton, as I mentioned. And the refs do have a tendency to allow more stuff like that on big, strong, tough quarterbacks who aren't going to complain about it. But maybe now the spotlight is on Denver to the point that Luck, Cam, whoever they're playing who fits that description, maybe gets some calls.
Yeah, no question about that. They're going to be scrutinized. There will be scrutiny, and there will be a quick trigger, if you will, from the officials to throw the flag if they do basically cross over that line. So we'll see exactly how tight this game is officiated on Sunday.
No question. Denver favored by 6 at Mile High. And as we alluded to earlier, the Colts trying to avoid going 0-2. Only 12% of those teams making the playoffs for the 3rd straight season. When we come back, Mark stays with us. Will Rex Ryan continue his domination of Ryan Fitzpatrick? We will reveal the Twitter results after the break.
First Take is presented by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. And in part by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
You are going with Max Kellerman?
It's a great schedule, by the way, because a lot of evenly matched good matchups.
Great
Dolphins
schedule,
at Seattle. I like Seattle at home as a lock.
What about you, Molly?
I'm going Seattle at home, too.
Middle alley, you pass to the back corner. Nick Baldwin. Touchdown, Seahawks. Touchdown, Seahawks.
I'm rolling with the Kansas City Chiefs at home over the San Diego Chargers.
Smith will keep it. He dives for the end zone. He's got a touchdown. Kansas City in one of the greatest comebacks in Chiefs Kingdom history.
Oh, that was close. We are live by the skin of our teeth. This week, I am rolling with Cam and the Panthers to rebound after last week against the Niners in Charlotte. Max, who you got?
You're cribbing my notes again, are you, Molly?
Stop it. I went first.
Interesting. After success in week 1, look, the Carolina Panthers are not going to go 0-2 on the season. Hosting the Niners, whose starting quarterback is Blaine Gabbert, not going to happen. Panthers, a lock.
Stephen A.?
I don't even understand why y'all are asking me this question. It's a complete waste of time. I think y'all should be embarrassed for picking anybody other than Seattle. Who are they playing? The Legion of Boom against Case Keenum? Really? There's an actual discussion here? Are you kidding me?
We can't pick Seattle, Stephen A., because we picked them last week.
We can't take Seattle. We took them already.
Pay attention to the rules, Stephen A.
Now, why would y'all pick them week 1 when you knew they had the Rams in week 2? You're lucky you escaped last week. I mean, you should have saved it for this week. I got Seattle only because and simply because they're playing Jeff Fisher's Rams. That's it. I don't need any other. I mean, let me look into the camera and say this to the Seattle Seahawks. Let me guarantee y'all why they're going to win. I'm going to look the Seattle Seahawks in the camera and say this. Y'all going to go to Los Angeles and lose to Case Keenum and Jeff Fisher. Really? Really? That's all I got to say.
Mark, what do you think of our picks?
They heard me.
Okay.
They heard me.
I think play them tough.
Yeah, I think first, I love the Carolina pick.
Thank you.
As we sit here and talk on a consistent as we sit here and talk on a consistent basis about player safety being the #1 priority of this league. And then we go late night, Monday Night Football. San Francisco plays that game against the Rams on 5 days rest. They fly clear across the country to play a team that's been hanging out for 10 days. They're fresh and ready to hunt. Nothing says player safety better than that. Okay, I'm going to go off the map here. I'm going the Lions. Lions playing at home. They've been playing really well. 6-2 to finish the season last year. Won a game in Indy last week. I think the Lions beat the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, Matthew Stafford certainly aired it out. Let's go to the game tonight, though, guys. We asked you earlier in the show, who do you have tonight, Jets or Bills? The results are in, saying that 60% are rolling with the Jets. Mark, I know who that's. You were taking them as well. Max, what do you think? Did the followers get it right? Jets winning?
They got it right. People know what they're looking at. Look, let's see how good Baltimore is this year. But we know the Bengals are a good team. And watching the Jets play the Bengals and lose close, they were a more impressive football team week 1 than the Bills were losing to the Ravens. Even though the Jets were at home and the Bills were on the road, the eyeball test, the Jets look better than the Bills.
I got the Jets tonight. I'm attaching the level of urgency to them. I think they're a better team. They're a more complete team. But Todd Bowles and particularly Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's 1-8 against Rex Ryan, has got to step it up. And Brandon Marshall cannot drop pivotal passes in the fourth quarter when you're trying to position yourself for a game-winning drive or field goal in this particular instance. You've got to make those catches. You're a number 1 receiver, potentially a future Hall of Famer. You have to show us. Stop dropping these kind of passes. I believe he will stop. I believe he will show up big time. I believe they will respond to the challenge. And I'm picking the Jets to win this game 24-20.
I love Max's eyeball test because I'm going with that same eyeball test. And I'm telling you, as I broke this film down, I think it was Monday that I broke that film down, I made several trips to the bathroom because I got sick watching the Jets and watching that defense absolutely destroy a great offensive line for the Cincinnati Bengals. That was men amongst boys. It was frightening for me as a former offensive lineman. I was absolutely ill in my stomach. What they did to that Cincinnati front was, I mean, there are people spending 5 to 10 in the state pen that did less to get there than what the Jets did to the Cincinnati Bengals up front. It was embarrassing.
No question. And tomorrow, guys, guess who's here?
Who?
Terry Crews.
Really?
Guess who else is here?
Who?
Mark Schlereth.
Former Redskin.
Are you guys going to have
Molly?
a gun show right here? Yeah.
Molly,
Yeah.
I want to congratulate Ted Cruz because obviously he elected acting over playing for the Rams. I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud.
Terry Crews there on that.
President Camacho.
Ted Cruz, you weren't giving love
Ted
to.
Cruz has never played anything.
Sorry, Bills Mafia. No love. We'll break it down tomorrow. This is First Take.